Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Curse of Chucky. So, I was watching, of course, Chucky the series, and it seems like there was a character that was tied to that show that was tied to this movie. So I was like, okay, well, I, of course, need to be a kind of completionist of sorts to understand a reason why a character is to be involved in so and so episode of Chucky when I am not familiar with said person. So, come to find out, Fiona is to be a character called Nika in this movie, and Fiona, of course, is to actually be the daughter of Brad, which I was like, okay, this is kind of really interesting to have figured that out, because I probably should have figured that out when I was strolling through IMDb earlier, but it is what it is. So, how did I overall feel about this movie? Where could you go out of your way to find it? Well, where could you go out of your way to find it? If you go into a Google Play app, you can go on to an app called TV Crush and see this yourself for absolutely free. There's no fees for any of this. I think most of the Chucky Child's Play films are on that app for the most point, so you can go and find all of them and see them for free. Or you can go onto Peacock and watch some Chucky films on there also if you conveniently have Peacock already, because you might be going in there for Halloween Kills or Yellowstone or any number of other shows and stuff that's in there. WWE, if you're a WWE fan, and so on and so forth. So, this movie honestly is far too slow. But even that, there are moments when, like, the only good thing about this movie is it technically ties into the very first Child's Play film. And that's it. Everything else about this film is too slow, or is to just be like, man, like, this movie used to be an hour and a half, and man, are they, like, stretching certain scenes because they have not much else to do. But I do like one, like, obviously, like, the athleticism of Fiona in this movie, where she's having to, like, carry herself up some flight of stairs, which is not going to be a easy task to do. Um, as well as also, we just have Nika, who is to be, uh, like, a really good performer, within this film, as well as that, but also in, like, the Cult of Chucky too. I really like her performance in that movie also. Funny enough, I watched the movies out of order. I watched Cult of Chucky, and then I came back and I watched this movie, because I didn't realize that Nico was in two films. So I was like, oh crap, I gotta watch both of these, because completionists, to just kind of know where something comes from. So that means completionist, weirdly. Anyways, so the teeing up version of this film, well, we find a character, Nika, who is to, of course, be a paraplegic person, and so she is to go off and is to have some box randomly delivered at her house, which it isn't random, but it feels random at first. And so, but there's a whole reason behind that. So, this box is to, of course, be delivered. And so, they just go and they chuck this doll into the garbage because they're like, nah, I'm not going to do anything with this. So, there is to be a reason, let's just say, that there's to be some kind of family reunion going on in this film, which all of a sudden lands Chucky into the arms of a child. And so then after that moment, we have this child's toy going and wreaking havoc and starting to kill a cluster of people. I say cluster because it's about roughly like a handful of people in this film. And with that said, there's a lot of times where it seems that the whole kill part of really what Chucky's doing here isn't all that like isn't all that clear. Isn't all that just like I know. So with that said, let's just get into spoilers about this one. Let's just crank out this review so I can say adieu and get out of here. So, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time we get to spoil this movie. So, Nika is to, of course, there seems to be some kind of package at the door, for Nika. Some, box, of course, that is to, I guess, be for her mother. Uh, and Nika is to go and talk to this delivery guy because I guess he is to know that this girl used to go to college and not anymore. It seems like there's a possibility for a love connection here. And like Sarah was to say that in this kind of like, ooh, like, hey, you're beautiful, and like maybe you guys could work something out. Like, seems like you knew one another. So here's the thing: when we look at Sarah's face, we see that there is some kind of makeup being put together upon this woman to make her look older. So I'm like, there's going to be a flashback in our future in this film for whatever reason. So Nika didn't go to the door right away because she was too busy playing solitaire for whatever reason, and nobody really wanted to go to the door. They could have just waited it out. Will he drop off the box that nobody wanted? Like, what if they didn't get the box? Was it just going to be left in UPS, and we could have had a whole completely different movie altogether, or whatever thing that they shipped this off as? The USXEX guy, the EX company could have had to deal with this. Anyways, pushing on. So they open up this doll and like, this isn't what I ordered, because they didn't order this at all. So they go and they dump this thing in the trash, and so the following night, or the following day, Nika is to wake up to find her mother dead with a thing of scissors in her body. And so Nika is to call the police, and so nobody is to question whether Nika was to have actually killed her mother. When really looking at it, like, you could say that Nika didn't have a motive because technically, like, Nika needed her mother to live so that way, like, of course, Sarah could help Nika. So I guess there might not have exactly been a motive there. So, but you would have thought maybe like it was a crime of passion. Like, it could have been like, what if she was killed like 30 or stabbed 30 times? Of like, I think that this is a crime of passion here, because technically there might have been a crime of passion going on with Chucky in this movie somewhere. So, but we'll save that for some time in the distance. So now Father Frank is to come on down because he's the next contestant on He May Die Soon, as well as Barb, who is to, of course, be Nika's sister, which I guess, like, Barb decided to just go off and get married with some guy and have a kid and just no longer be anywhere near probably where Nika is to actually live. So Barb immediately comes in and is to say, it's like, well, hey, I guess since I own 50% of this house now that our mother is dead, I want to sell the house because money's tight. It's like, 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 immediately, like, Barb is just kind of taking control of the situation and just, like, putting her needs first, as well as me thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, your money is tight, but, like, you hired a $400, like, assistant, and that's more than your husband actually makes doing his job, and you, and you're saying money is tight. Cut the budget by cutting off that assistant, because what do you need an assistant for, you lazy bit? Uh, that's one way to save some cash. Um, but I think just Barb is a manipulative person that is just like, well, I want what I want, and I don't care like for anybody else. It seems for this character, sadly enough. So Nika is to try to fight for this house, and so Barb and Jill are having this conversation while they're making out later. Jill is like, "Hey, you don't need to sell this house. You don't really need the money." Like, and Barb is like, "Well, yeah, but like Nika is a mess, and I have to take care of a mess, so like we're gonna have to sell this house." Like that's what it comes down to. Uh, so because but let's get to the let's kind of a little bit. So uh Alice is to go on and find this doll within this house, and so Nika's like, sure, it's yours, there you go. Like, you're a kid, that's a doll, that this is for you. And so now we're like, okay, here's where the killing starts. So now Nika had decided to go with Alice to make food for everybody. Even Father Frank, who's deciding to, I guess, stay as long as he freaking wants because he has nothing better to do. So they go on and they make everybody this chili, and Chucky also puts in a secret ingredient of poison in someone's bowl. So everybody is to have a long stretch of milking this out when it comes down to this whole chili bowl thing. And it's, I'm being honest, it's just like they're teasing the crap out of someone croaking, and I'm like, this freaking sucks. So, uh, so there's some people that are kind of like, I'm like, wow, really? Man, this food tastes weird. Like maybe we put too much oregano in. No, like we don't see anybody fall over dead right here into this meal. But then all of a sudden, Father Frank is just kind of sweating a little bit, and so Barb is like, "Father Frank, are you okay?" And Father Frank is like, "Oh, like I've just realized that I had a last minute appointment to take the Browns to the Super Bowl, because it honestly looks like when he's like walking away from this table, it looks like he's gonna take a crap or something. I don't know. Maybe he's gonna release the demon to. I don't know. But Father Frank is walking off, and he's like, okay, like I'm gonna leave. So we see Father Frank really going off because he ends up into a car accident, which leads to his death because he ends up getting, I guess, crushed, or his car ends up getting crushed. And weirdly, by the way that his car ends up getting crushed, they try and pull apart these car pieces to have Father Frank's head come off, and he dies. So Chucky didn't get a kill out of that, but technically, I guess he did. So now everybody is to go off and do their thing after this whole meal because I guess that's where the poison was. And so uh, Nika is to go off and try to use the elevator, and it seems that the elevator loses power and she gets stuck on some floor. And she tries to like open up the elevator, and she gets stuck. So Barb is now hearing Nika shouting, and so Barb is like, God, I'm gonna have to go and take care of her. So Barb opens this elevator door, and Alice is there to want to have Alice tell her some story. And Nika's like, sure, I'll go and do that. And Barb is like, you shouldn't like overexert yourself. And Nika's like I'm a paraplegic. I'm not a useless. I'm not a useless person. It's like, no, she's not. She's like just like everyone else. So, but Barb is like, but your condition, your heart condition, like, I don't know if reading a book can, like, I don't think that you can, like, take that physical act of whatever. I'm like, dude, she eventually in this movie has to, like, physically climb up quite a few stairs to make it to everyone else in this film. Like, if she can do that, I think reading a book is just, like, not a problem, is a piece of cake. So, but Barb is like, your condition, and Nika's just like, whatever, whatever with you people. So Jill is to go off, and after like Barb and Jill were having this makeout session, Jill goes off and I guess tucks Alice in, takes care of her, whatever. Um, and so Alice is start to get scared because of the thunder, the lightning, whichever. And so Alice is kind of like bunkered down under the sheets and talk to Chucky and say like, "Hey, I'm scared of the weather. Like I'm scared." And Chucky's like, "Yeah, you should be. You should be." Because he actually talks at this moment. He actually does a thing. When Alice first sees Chucky, Chucky's to like raise his hand and scare her a little bit. Um, so now um, we have Jill and Barb doing this kind of this Skyping between one another. And so Jill is to kind of do this teasing thing. So is Barb, while Ian is to be sleeping next to Barb. And so all of a sudden, Barb is to see some movement in the background, thinking it's Alice, but it's not. So Jill all of a sudden is to, in her room, have this bucket that is to be leaking from the roof, and it's kind of dripping this water. And so Jill is to go and turn to the side to all of a sudden see Chucky go and dump this bucket and electrify Jill, and is to, because it hits the outlet, and like of course Jill ends up getting electrified. And I'm just like, Jill couldn't have easily just like lifted up her feet? Wouldn't that have completely avoided her from getting electrified here? But I guess she doesn't do that, so she's dead now. Which I don't think we end up seeing her actual body anytime soon. So while Jill is getting electrified, just having fun, just doing that for whatever reason, Nika is going off into her laptop to go and investigate something, because Nika is to see that there was some kind of evidence in this box that this doll had, I guess, been from some evidence case or some evidence thing from some police department. So she was a little confused about that. So she ends up Googling Chucky doll evidence, and bizarrely that leads right into to Wang Pics. And I'm just like, of course, like every time you search into something, immediately it goes right to that. Nika is to search, and she finds out that it's to go into the whole, like, hey, like, a number of cold cases, a number of murders have happened, all supposedly tying to this doll, yada, yada, yada. Everything that eventually you are to have seen in the Chucky series, or pretty much everywhere at some point when we get into these films. So Nika is trying to do the right thing, and is to realize that this doll may be a murderer. So, but power is out in this house. So Nika is to now have to schlep her way, um, and kind of have to like get out of this wheelchair and kind of climb up these stairs to let everybody know that they're probably going to die soon and hope they enjoy the time of which that they have lived for. So Nika makes it up the stairs and she's hooting and hollering. Ian is to have kind of things in his ear, and like Alice is to be missing somewhere. They have to go and eventually find her because she's playing hide and seek. So Barb before Barb before Nika is to go up the stairs. Barb is to go and figure out that it seems that Alice and Jill have gone missing. So Barb starts looking around, and Barb is to uh, before Barb is to go off, Ian is to say like, "Hey, like, where are you going? Like, are you going and trying something, some deep dark fantasy fulfilled?" And Ian's like, or and so Barb is like, "Well, I don't know about your fantasies, but like, me and there's nothing going on with me and Jill." And Ian's like, "Sure there isn't, sure there isn't." So Barb goes off to try and find where the girls are, and she decides to go and head up into the attic because she hears something. So she goes into the attic, and all she sees, of course, is Chucky doll. So weirdly enough, we have Barb, who didn't realize this in the bright of day about this doll, but she then weirdly realizes it now that there is to be some things kind of facially messed up about this doll. So Barb just starts picking at it, and so like realizes that there are certain scar marks upon this doll. And so then uh, Chucky ends up scaring Barb and having her tossed back. And so now Chucky goes and starts walking closer and closer to, of course, Barb. And like Barb also realized at some point that like this doll had like a kitchen blade with it. It's like, okay, this is weird. So Chucky is to now, of course, tell Barb that it seems that Barb and her mother had the exact same eyes, but the only problem with Sarah as well as Barb is that they're always so close together. So Chucky goes and stabs Barb in the eye and, of course, kills her. And so when Nika makes it up the stairs to kind of yell and shout for anybody, all of a sudden Barb has come flying down this flight of stairs from this attic and is to fall on top of Nika. And so Barb now, considering everybody is either gone, missing, or whatever, Nika goes to Ian and is to plead for him to help her. So, because Nika ends up finding this one wheelchair and going on to Ian's room because Chucky is after her. So, Ian is to not really believe what, of course, Nika is saying. And so Ian is to try and figure out where Alice is. And so what he ends up doing is he realizes that he had placed a nanny cam in the doll to kind of figure out what is going on with his wife and Jill, but also just kind of figure out where Alice is. So Ian eventually watches this video of him, I guess, at some point going and trying to find out the truth about his wife. And so they watch the whole video, and like Ian is to see that his wife was cheating on him, but he's like, okay, well, she's dead, so who cares? So fast forward, and so uh, both Alice and Chucky are talking to one another, and so Ian is like, okay, my kid's in there. Like, okay, so Ian knows exactly where Alice is hiding. So Ian goes and picks Nika up and takes her downstairs to make it to the garage uh, where Nika is to have her now um, have Chucky like in his car and almost is going to run her over. So Nika has to forcibly like adjust her wheelchair to try to avoid Chucky running her over, and so Nika then crashes through the window and is to, of course, go and try to get the keys away from Chucky, and Chucky swallows it. And so by the time that Ian comes back um, with Alice, uh, Nika is to go on and need her medication and asks Ian to give her this medication, which he doesn't, and so Nika passes out. I don't know if like we get to the nanny cam before or after this situation, but either way, it is what it is. So eventually, what plays out here is that, of course, uh, Ian is, of course, to die because why wouldn't he? And so what happens is that Ian is to not really and truly believe about this doll. And so really he is to just kind of uh, how exactly does Ian die? How exactly does this happen? Because I know I'm going to get this confused. Let me pause here for 1 second. All right. So, of course, Nika is to wake up. And so, what ends up happening is Chucky, because Ian can't really see what's going on, Chucky goes on to uh, take Nika with her wheelchair and rams it into Ian, having him fall over. And so now that we had that axe in play from before, with the whole car situation in the garage and whatever, we have that come back into play here. And so eventually Ian's jaw is to basically be completely off, and Ian is then forced to die after this. And like this is kind of like very familiar to me because I just seen another like Chucky movie where like Chucky is to like rip out someone's like tongue, which I think was in Cult of Chucky, and I got a little confused about this moment here because here's the thing that here's my confusion. It should be the simplest thing in the world, but I have just seen two Chucky movies back to back, and things are eventually going to get confusing. Because also, like, Cult of Chucky has a lot more going on to it, and I'm still gonna have to like review that movie, so it'll be really interesting to get that review out after this, just because I normally don't do uh, certain movies back to back if it's the same thing. So Nika is to now have to deal with Chucky because she's basically the only one left now. Everyone is dead with the exclusion of Alice, who is still hiding away. So now, so Chucky is to still have this axe. So when Chucky's to come at Nika with this axe, Nika takes her wheelchair and like kind of props it up to where uh, Chucky is to stab Nika in the leg. And of course, like Nika can't feel anything from the waist down, so she doesn't feel this axe in her leg. But I'm still seeing she's bleeding heavily, which freaking sucks. So Nika is to go on to kind of race her way into this elevator to not be able to go anywhere, but she's just trying to defend herself. And so, because Nika is to get the axe and pull it out of her leg, and is to go and chop off Chucky's head. But now we find out if you chop off Chucky's head, it's pointless. Like when we get to kind of Cult of Chucky, we really just find out like how really this character is to be a very durable character, and yeah, it's gonna be like a waste to try and like kill this character because anything will still seemingly be alive, whether it's like the weakest kind of piece left of it, whichever. So but like Cult of Chucky has an interesting gimmick to it, but we'll get to that. So and that's I guess the only good thing about the movie is has it has an interesting gimmick to it, but whatever. So but let's go back into this movie. So Nika is now in the elevator, and Chucky is to consistently try and stab Nika, cutting her fingers, and so Nika eventually gets the knife away from Chucky, and then she's like, "Come on, let's play." And so now Chucky is to open the door and to come on in, and so we now have Nika going and stabbing Chucky into the back, and so now we just kind of assume that uh, that Nika has won in whichever, but we'll really just find that quite different because Chucky is to also give Nika this information that before the first Child's Play movie, it seemed that Charles Lee Ray was to be a guy that was to kind of hunt after, and I say hunt because he kills. Uh, he goes out and tries to find certain families and attach himself to them. And so it seems that after Charles is to find out that Sarah's husband was to die for whatever reason, that Chucky latched on to Sarah, who I guess was pregnant with a second child. And so Charles is to have taken advantage of Sarah being pregnant and kind of hold her hostage in her home. And so Charles is to say that he's going and getting uh, Barbie, which is Barb. And so, because that's the nickname of Barb, is Barbie. So, hilariously enough, right? Barbie, Barb. Uh, so Charles is consistently mentioning that he's gonna go and get Barb, and so Sarah's like, "Well, no, like that's gonna cut into the time between you and me. Like, stay here." And so all of a sudden we find out that I guess Sarah at some point had called the cops, and so that leads Charles to run off to go into this toy store to voodoo magic himself into tying or latching himself onto this doll before he is to die. So that kind of sets up the very first Child's Play movie to kind of give us some kind of backstory of this character. So what happens is that we have this cop who is to come on in into this home because I guess for whatever reason police had eventually been called, and so this leads us to have Chucky still not dead by the end of this movie, and so they end up going on and assuming that Nika had to have been the culprit to these murders, and so they end up going off and sending her to jail because like she's the only one left alive here, so she had to be the murderer of all this, even though it really doesn't rationally quite make sense. So Alice is to go off and live with Tiffany and Chucky. And so the weird thing about Cult of Chucky is Alice doesn't come up here. So I'm wondering if in the series are they going to re-tie in Alice, considering they've tied in Nika, because that would make a lot of sense. Because like where was this Alice girl? Because in Cult of Chucky they reference Alice, but I don't think they do away with her. So, because Tiffany is to mention, like, yeah, I really loved spending time with that Alice girl, but where is the connection? Is there to be some kind of hidden connection where we don't even realize in this movie somewhere that there's a connection? I'm just really curious where that ties in, or maybe there's something that I missed somewhere. But with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Oh, and I hope I covered most of this movie, but I kind of quickly kind of rushed through this also. So, yeah. So, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.